Good afternoon. Welcome to the March 21st session of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates. I'll call this meeting to order, and we will begin with a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Thank you, and now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The clerk will call the roll.
Richard Anderson.
Here.
Cheryl Andrews. Here. Ronald Bergstrom.
Here.
Leo Kukunis. Christopher Kanega. Here. James Killian. Marcia King. Here. Thomas Lynch. Teresa Martin. Here. Deborah McCutcheon. Here. Spiro Mitrakostas.
Here.
John Oman.
Here.
Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise. Julia Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum present with 64.95% of the delegates present, 35.05% absent.
Thank you. I'll now need a motion to approve the calendar of business. Is there any additions or corrections to the calendar? Hearing none.
Motion to approve the calendar of business.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You should have received a copy of the Journal of March 7, 2012. Are there any additions or corrections to the Journal? Hearing none.
Motion to approve the Journal of March 7th, 2012.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, now the Board of Regional Commissioners and former Senators O'Leary and Rauschenbeck are conspicuously absent right now, so I'll have to go to communications from public officials. Any public communications from members of the... Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. Communication from members of the public. No communications from members of the public. We'll give the senators a chance to regroup. Why don't you come right up to the front?
Well, we just want to go down the road.
You bring any commissioners with you, or are they?
I think they're on their way over. I think they're concluding a little bit.
Oh, good, another binder.
Of course, this is non-binding.
A non-binding binder.
Yeah, it's on the exam. You're welcome.
Might want to mention that somebody else is recording the meeting.
Okay, I noticed it, yeah. Yeah, I should notify everyone in the room that this meeting is being recorded by several sources, so anything you say can and will be used against you.
We've got a couple members absent.
Okay. All right.
I need three.
All right.
Okay.
I'm out.
Okay, wait until our clerk returns, and then we'll give you guys the stage.
Okay.
Janice?
Okay,
Welcome, Senators. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Be very brief and kind of open it up to questions and keep it fairly informal.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. We're here to just, on behalf of, as you know, back in October of last year, we were asked by the county commissioners to do a kind of review of responsible county government. And we brought together a lot of people, some of whom are in this room, and others who have a lot of experience with the community, with the Cape, with the county and county government in the past, state and local government as well. And We had
Did you want-
a whole set of meetings. We met from October through till March, really, right?
Basically, yeah, right at the end of February,
yeah. And I must say that, I make a couple of observations. First of all, we met frequently. We met at least, I would say, about twice a month. Meetings were fairly long, fairly extensive, and they were very well attended. People came regularly. There was very, very good attendance. And the debate was very good. It was very constructive, very civil, and I think it reflected well on the Cape and on frankly, on people's feelings about the county and the importance of it, because that underlied everything. I think there was a general feeling that it's important for the Cape to have a strong, vibrant regional government that's responding to issues here on the Cape. I think that underlied the whole discussions. There were differences of opinion. Not everything was unanimous. There were votes in which some people felt otherwise. We had, I think, a healthy debate. But on balance, I think there was general agreement, if I were to characterize it, general agreement. We have a series of reports that was circulated. As you know, and you know this better than Henri and I do, that in the end, this is only a recommendation, and that if there is going to be a charter change, it's going to require, at least if we go one path, it's going to require the action of this body. And so that's an issue for you to deal with and to address. And then, of course, I think if some of these recommendations are carried through, there's clearly going to be needed for change in state law as well. So that's going to involve the state delegation and your relationship with them. But we're more than happy, I think, to answer. I can lay out some of the general ideas. There were three general areas that we focused on, and I don't think any of these will surprise you. First, we did recommend that a variety of regional entities that are out there independent of the county currently be brought in under the county umbrella. That we felt for a variety of reasons, and it wasn't meant to be critical of what they were doing or how they were doing it. It was more a function of if we have a regional government, it seems to make sense to locate those regional governmental services that are being performed out there across the Cape as it currently stands. And that would result in better coordination, higher visibility, and more accountability. And I think in the end, those agencies will be able to do their jobs more effectively if they're co-located and coordinated under the county. So we felt that was one recommendation. The second went to the structure of county government, which is how do we, what kind of reforms did we think would better serve the county? And our feeling was that we should merge the Assembly and the county commissioners into a single entity, because we didn't feel there was a powerful argument for a divided government here at the county level, given the size and scale of the county. And that there is an argument to merge together the two entities, the Assembly and the Commission, under a single larger body. And we laid out some specifics around what we thought that should look like and why. Beyond that, we also called for reforming the county administrator's role and making that more in keeping with what we see at the town levels, which is a more professional sort of management role with more authority, and separate it out from his role as a treasurer, county treasurer. And then in the third area, we didn't get into specifics, but we did call for the creation of a regional wastewater entity or authority, and I use the word authority. Some others feel that's too strong a word, but I felt it was important simply to get that discussion beyond the discussion stage, to begin to focus people's attention on what is a critical issue for the Cape and for the county. And we've been talking about it for 10 years here now, and it's time now to move that discussion to a higher level, to get into specifics and start the debate about what kind of institutions we want to create, what kind of authority we want to give them or not give them, how we want to define the relationship of a regional entity relative to the towns and to the state. That we have to begin to confront those issues. They're not easy. There are a lot of differences of opinion out there around them, but clearly we need to move beyond simply talking about the broader issue and get into the details of how we're going to come to grips with it. So we thought it was important in this report to at least begin pushing that issue out and focusing attention on it. So, I don't know, Henri, you want to?
Well, there's not much more to add on that. I did make this comment over at the county commissioners. There was a sort of undercurrent thought that the only reason that perhaps, our commission was established was to eliminate the assembly. And that sort of was a bit of an undercurrent. But if you look at the report, you realize that this group of folks that we had who were very diverse, very dedicated, representing a variety of sort of walks of life on the Cape, and we had a little bit of fun, but a lot of everybody was like former senator and former county commissioner and former treasurer and former this, that, and the other thing. But the recommendations that we spent a lot of time on, I think in terms of where the county can go or should go, reaffirming some of the functions that the county currently is undergoing, like Russ, et cetera, are all good, solid things. And the administrative side, I think it's apparent to us that the current county structure with the county commissioners as the administrators, it's enormously difficult to expect that they can fulfill the administrative side of this while at the same time they're leading the charge on a lot of new policy directives that's going to recreate, re-energize, reinvigorate, and make this county more relevant. And to that degree, we address that by have a strong county commissioner, have a strong county administrator, and free up the policy-making part of it and merge the assembly and the commissioners, a pure policy sort of wing. We thought that was pragmatic in it. So, it's a solid report. It is easy to say what we've done, infinitely more difficult for many of these provisions, not all of them, but many of them to be implemented. Right. Requires you to sort of join the dance. And easy to say we want to head in this direction, but in many respects can't get there without you. So, I guess our hope is that you would spend time on this and look at it and think about it and not wait too long, because, the world is changing very quickly, dramatically. We had a lot of debates on, just public health and things like that didn't move into a strong recommendation here, but the world is changing around us. The relationship between the state and the cities and towns and the feds as it relates to subsidies and grants, and it's all changing, and it's going to continue to change. The world is not going to get a lot easier over the next 3 to 5 years. For the county to survive, it's got to be really relevant on the municipal service side, aggregating that, etc., looking to develop a stronger relationship with the Commonwealth on the delivery of services. Otherwise, people will look at it and decide just to pick its bones and, return the money to the towns and eliminate it. So, we've survived because the county's been relevant. And for it to stay relevant, I think will require a lot of soul-searching and thinking on the part not only of the commissioners, but you as well. Right. And
I agree.
Well, thank you. Just before I open up to questions, I'm glad you put this in front of us, because even though there's been reports in the press, and obviously I was on the commission and Julie was on the commission, the word has gotten out to the community. Today, with the presentation of our recommendations, or through your recommendations to the commissioners and to the assembly, this is sort of officially on the table now, so we can open it up in discussion. People won't be, aiming at a moving target, which I think they have been on before.
Ron, I think they're our recommendations.
Yes, they are your recommendations. Okay, yeah. Like you say, it wasn't always unanimous.
No, it was not.
Julius, too.
Anyway, so we'll soon find out what kind of a reception you get right now from the assembly. So, do I have anybody who'd like to ask the former senators anything about this report? Don't be bashful. No? Julie?
Excuse me, because I'm chewing a lozenge because I'm a little hoarse. But no, I'm glad we've got it down, and I think it reads well, the things I've read. One thing that I did bring up during the discussions and then didn't really follow up on later, but do remember that there was unanimous support for, but it didn't get put on the list to get put as was the question of money and the question of whether the county might need more money, more revenue, given some of these projects and challenges. And my recollection was that there was, surprisingly, a unanimous sense that that was not a crazy idea, that there might be the need for increased revenue, and that we might have to seek that. Do you remember that discussion? Or would you agree with that?
Yeah, we certainly discussed that, but in reality, the county has available to it the capacity to go, at least under the current structure for how you raise revenues. The county has a capacity. I think the idea is, how would the public feel about this as an investment that would be made, basically, of their dollars coming out of the real estate community? We didn't have a discussion, would there be a broader revenue stream that should be available or a different revenue stream. And in many respects, I think we thought with the establishment of a recommendation for an authority, which would, without a doubt, raise those very same questions and issues that, the fact that the county has access to capacity that they haven't opted to use for, a variety of reasons, some of which were explained and some not, that we didn't necessarily have to opine on that.
Okay. Anybody else? Spiro?
Thank you, Senators, for your work on this committee. I noticed that you came down on the side of an appointed executive, which obviously would be appointed by the whatever body exists as part of this recommendation going forward. Did you consider a residency requirement? There's a natural residency requirement if you were to go with an elected official, because obviously they need to be part of the county that he's coming from. But we originally, in the county charter, up until 18 months ago, had a residency requirement, which, not coincidentally, we didn't follow. But now that we're putting that back on the table, why not have somebody who lives in Barnstable County and pays Barnstable County taxes and votes in Barnstable County precincts be part of the county government?
Right. It never surfaced as, it was not, I don't recall.
No, the language for the strong county administrator came from the two town managers and one former town manager who served on the commission. And they laid that out, I think, as the core sort of principled statement. In reality, I think if the commissioners, and I would say that there's nothing to preclude the commissioners from adopting that recommendation tomorrow and working with the Assembly to alter the structure. I mean, you don't need legislation really to do this. We think it's really critically important that this change occur. It doesn't require legislation or anything. It requires, I think, the county to decide they like this structure, and that would be you and the commissioners working together. But assuming that this would go forward, I think you would have a host of discussions, criterion. We don't mention a salary, we do on the elected side. We don't reference working conditions. We sort of do what's the scope of what the job would be, which is the most relevant part of it, and then the rest of it is sort of up to speed, and, the town managers didn't put it in, but they're town managers that don't live in the town that they're town managers of, et cetera, and they're town managers that live on the Cape that work off Cape as well. So, but that would be a matter for you to discuss with the commissioners should they decide that they want to move down this path.
John, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you again for your hard work. I was able to attend many of those meetings. And I appreciate the hard work that you and your committee did. There were just one small thing and one thing I want to just explore with you. Are there voting records available?
Yes.
Yes, and there are minutes as well.
Yeah, I saw the minutes are included in here, but I didn't see any voting records.
No, we have that.
We have.
We're, cobbled a little bit together. Patricia was away.
But we could get those for you.
Yeah,
She's
I
back.
think that's an important
We
function.
have that, so we will make that available.
And there was sort of a private discussion between you two, the highest-ranking members for the legislature that either in the form of members of the legislature, and use the term notwithstanding.
Oh, yes, yes.
And I would like to know if you could elaborate to the
Well,
board here.
I think what we were saying was that, I think it was in the context of, we would hand this recommendation to the Assembly, and I think your chairman made the comment that, as I recall in the discussion, that
I'm a speaker, not a chairman.
Speaker, that any change, charter change, would require a vote of the Assembly of Delegates as a matter of charter. And I think the discussion we had was that that's true with respect to the charter, but it's our understanding, and again, neither of us are lawyers, we just have some experience in state government, is that counties are a creature of state law. They're created by state law, and the authorities and the structures they have and their virtual existence depends on state law. So you can, if you wanted to, you could simply file state legislation and address the issue of changes in the county government through a state statute. And as an aside, and to the extent that it impacts on existing laws or existing arrangements, the universal word used in those pieces of legislation is notwithstanding any other state legislation we wish to go in this direction. So we were simply laying that out as an alternative pathway, if that was felt to be the way to go in terms of making this charter, in fact, making it happen.
Yeah. I think it's important, and I would think that it would have to go to the ballot regardless of what the legislature
Either way,
did. Yes.
yeah.
So that would be-
Regardless.
Irregardless is another word that we use.
Whichever way you go would require, I think it would make sense to have a ballot question on something like this, absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Deborah.
I haven't had an opportunity to read this whole report yet, but coming from Truro, I'm asking the question. A lot of people in Truro feel like people on the Outer Cape don't have the same level of wastewater problems and sewage problems that are present in other parts of the Cape. I think there was recently a suggestion that east of the Bass River should be Pamuk County as opposed to part of Barnstable County. Be that as it may, for people in Truro, the proposals coming from this committee look like they're raising two issues. One, we should pay for your sewer, and second, we should lose our representation. What do you say about that?
Well, I would disagree on both accounts. First of all, we are in terms of representation, we are establishing a 7-member governing policy-making body, and it's 5 of those seats would be district seats based on the one-man, one vote, and then 2 would be at large. So you're moving to a smaller body, but frankly, we're combining both the Assembly and the commissioners into a single entity. And I think the Lower Cape will be well represented, although there are, of course, the limits of one man, one vote, and you can't change the numbers as they are. But nonetheless, we felt with that combination of 2 at large and 5 districts, the Lower Cape would get some representation, significant representation in that policy-making body. We also added in an advisory body of local town managers, I believe, to act as an advisory body to the new commissioners. And we felt that would ensure that there would be a relationship between towns and the county going forward. In terms of wastewater, I think it's fair to say that different communities have different levels of a problem, and for some of the Lower Cape communities, not Provincetown, but some of the other Lower Cape communities, it's not as big an issue as it is, let's say, for a Harwich or a Mashpee or a Barnstable or a Falmouth. That is true, but it's nonetheless, it is a problem for all of us. And to the extent we see ourselves as a region, it's important that, I think that as a region we address this issue. And, we sort of live and die, we all, what, is it the old Ben Franklin line? We hang separate, what is it, how does it go about, I'm losing the quote.
We'll all hang together, or we'll all hang separately.
All hang separately. My sense is that there is a need for the Cape to deal with this issue regionally. It doesn't mean that every community is going to be tackle the same level of obligation. But in other words, if a that would be worked out in the details of dealing with the wastewater issue in terms of what the particular community's needs would be and what its obligations might be under some regional umbrella. That's something that can be sorted out down the road. But I think for those who believe this is a Cape-wide problem, if we simply do nothing and leave it to individual towns, given their financial limitations, and given what we know is happening at both the state and federal level, likely nothing's going to happen, or very little. So I think there's an opportunity for communities to come together around this issue regionally, and not sort of flee into a corner and say, well, it's not my problem, it's someone else's. I think that direction is the wrong direction for us to go, because I think in the end we won't solve this problem as a region if we don't come together around it cooperatively. You might not agree with that, but I don't know, Henri, how you feel, but I do feel that's an important undercurrent to this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, the lower in the Outer Cape, if I can just respond, the lower in the Outer Cape is kind of interesting. Up like 10 years ago, they're all just individual towns, really, not too much together. So regionally, the development of the lower Outer Cape, Health and Human Services Coalition, which presaged the Community Development Corporation, was the first time between Provincetown and Barnstable you had sort of a like interest developed around economic development and housing and those kinds of issues. Up until then, you'd had towns acting independently. You look at the relationship between Provincetown and Truro over water and saltwater intrusion and them pumping your wells, well, an interesting sort of issue, but Provincetown needs your water, and there's a lot of, when I was in, so there's a lot of tension, if I could use that word, over how much is the drawdown from Truro's well versus Provincetown, which has a problem, and yet it's your local regional. And you can sort of extrapolate that out. When a prisoner uses water down in Bourne or the facilities in Bourne, if that person came from Provincetown or the Lower Cape, I mean, is there a responsibility that's shared there? The notion of an authority isn't they're going to just put like 9-inch pipes and run it all the way down the Cape and you're going to pay a fortune for this. It's presumptive to say what they're going to do, but I think most of the chatter from, Andy Gottlieb and Paul Nizwicki has been that, you'd look for a solution that would be crafted around what your local interests are, what the specifics, your bays, estuaries, and bayments, the Pamet River, whatever you got going there, and it would be designed and built around that. It could be a small sort of a forced pipe, one of those little plastic pipes. It could be something larger. The idea is presumptuous to say that you're going to wind up paying for everything that goes on in Falmouth to Hyannis. So there'd be some shared responsibility, which is, I think, the only way the Cape is going to survive. So, we're comfortable with that. On the vote, the regional government, we just felt that in many respects, somebody representing a district that maybe runs from, Orleans to, or Eastham to, Provincetown, that with an equal sort of vote, and then two, at-large seats where there'd be, chasing votes out there, that would give, more strength to, 5 or 6 towns acting independently with a percentage vote, which some people sometimes argue doesn't seem to be fair when they participate in the process. So, we thought it was reasonable to come back with this as a structure. So that's our recommendation.
Well, if I could respond just briefly. I listened to Andy Gottlieb and Paul Nizwicki describing the issues behind wastewater, and I think that there are a lot of issues there that could unify people on the Cape, and that are issues that are common to all of us. Particularly, you raised the issue of water in Truro. There are being pumped willy-nilly into Provincetown where there's no control on growth. Those are the debates that we have at the local level. But I think that, well, it's true. But it seems to me that you create a divisive atmosphere when what you say is, we need to have input from cities and towns, but we're going to change that and not have representation as representation for the cities and towns. And it seems to me that putting all of this forward as a package may doom the pieces that are the most worthy, like getting control over wastewater, to getting linked together at the box office, as it were.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it. And I guess what I would say in response only is that when we talked about the wastewater issue, we did not specifically include it as an entity under the umbrella of the county. We didn't go there. We didn't make that recommendation. We simply said that there should be a regional wastewater entity. And, you can talk about the language here, whether it's an authority or whatever you want to call it. It could be, it could be under the county, and it could not be. And that would be, up to you and up to the voters and up to the others that want to look at this going forward. It could be a separate authority of some sort. It could have a different representative structure. Could have, a system where every community had an equal vote. I don't know. That's for someone else to fashion. But all we're saying in this report is, with respect to wastewater, is that we've been talking about this for 10 years. More than 10 years. It's a difficult thing to do. And whatever you do here, there's going to be opposition, because you're talking about things that are going to affect and impact people. The alternative is to do nothing. And that's the most likely pathway here, because it's difficult. So those who are sitting out there criticizing will dominate the discussion, in my opinion. So you have to be aggressive, and you have to, lay out a path and move beyond the general discussion that we've got a problem, and start, I like to say, the hangman's noose. You've got to, it focuses the attention of the condemned. It's if you put something out there with some meat on it that's got some structure and say, what do you think about this? Then you can start to have a real debate about what you want to do. And the kind of questions you raise are the kind of questions that need to be raised. Should this be under the existing county? Should it be outside it? Should towns have representation on it? What it should look like? What are the financial obligations? But we've got to move beyond the issue of just, we've got a problem, we need to do something, which is where the discussion has been for quite some time now. So that's all really what we're trying to do here, is, I like to say, put a stake in the ground and focus people's attention. Try to get something going here and let the debate begin. And I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a good one.
Now that we've heard from Truro, I think we're going to have to hear from Provincetown.
Could I just sort of...
Yes, certainly.
This is the beginning of what would be a process. If you undertake it, this would have to be done legislatively. It could involve taxing powers. There'd be a ballot question. And I think you, as players in this process, would want to fight your way into it. And I say that, not like it would be hard to do, but you'd be controlling part of this process, and you would demand that the towns be heard in this, because and the selectmen and everybody else want to know, what's our exposure in this, and if we're Chatham and we've invested, or what are we going to have to... Right. All those questions would come up, and I think it would go to a ballot. So, as Rob says, all of these things would have to be addressed and formulated. What we're saying is, let's start this process, and let's not worry about answering the questions that are going to come at the end, but let's start this process, because there's a serious issue on the Cape. Right. And much like the Cape Cod Commission, this is an issue of that magnitude for us here. So.
Okay. Cheryl?
Thank you. I'll work out my conversation with my neighbor to the south later. But I'm actually glad she made those comments, because our relationship with Truro, in terms of a regional cooperative relationship, goes back over 100 years. And despite how much scientific data we put on the table, that sort of resentment, and I think you captured it well from Truro residents, is there, and it always will be, no matter what we do. And so we're talking about two little towns at the end of the Cape, never mind the Cape. But back to the one comment I wanted to put on the table, I recognize what you're saying as far as fighting into the conversation. I have a sneaking suspicion this will be my one chance, so I'm going to say it now. and that is that you've put forth two scenarios. One is the do-nothing scenario, although we're not really doing nothing, but I understand what you're saying, versus the 15 towns getting together and having an authority. Those are your two sort of competing visions. I'm going to throw a third right in the middle, which is potentially an authority, but an authority that engulfs the towns most likely to work together and need to work together, as opposed to necessarily it being all 15. I think there is a disparity between Pampa County, but there is a disparity between the smaller towns on the Lower Cape and the rest of the Cape in terms of resources, growth and development, population, that puts the amount of concern you're seeing from our end of the Cape on the table. So I hope sooner rather than later, the options get expanded beyond those two. So that's just the one comment I wanted to make, and thank you for your comments.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here for a minute, because I have two experiences. First of all, I was an official in Chatham during their whole run-up to what's become their wastewater management plan, probably the most complete one on the Cape. I think it is probably one of the most complete in the state, and also sat on this commission with the two senators. If Chatham went through 12 or 13 years of building up to their wastewater management plan, you got to understand that 10 years was spent in the needs assessment. So 10 years was spent looking at the underlying science and deciding what areas needed the most mitigation, because nitrogen is, unlike pollutants and so on, is naturally occurs, and it's only when it's out of balance that it becomes a problem. So Chatham, we divided up the town into watersheds. You can say, well, Truro doesn't have a problem, or this, but it's not Truro, it's where you live. If you live on Pamet Harbor, you may have a problem. If you live on the ocean, you probably don't. And this is what happened in Chatham. So I would think that any agency, and I supported this, and when Andy and Paul brought it up, I said, we got to move on it. I was of like mind with Senator O'Leary, is that once you do the needs assessment, it's going to become very apparent where the problems are. So if you live in Chatham Harbor, you're not a problem. If you live in Stage Harbor, it is. So what's going to happen is, it's only when we did this, and it's quite complicated. It went through UMass down there and Bridgewater, I think, and there were volunteers involved in each estuary had volunteers who did the testing. And it was only when the determinations were made what mitigation had to be done that then we decided, okay, what are we going to do, and who's going to pay for it? So, for instance, if you put into a betterment and you didn't get the sewer extended to you, you didn't have to pay anything because you weren't part of the problem. So these issues, as Senator Rauschenbeck says, deciding how it's going to be paid for and who's going to pay for it are way down the road. Right now, you have to make an assessment of where the problem is, and it's not going to correspond to town lines. It's not going to correspond to the town line of Yarmouth, to the town line of Mashpee. So there are going to be people who live in these communities who live in widely dispersed housing that's not a problem. There's going to be people who live in concentrated housing that is a problem. So I think that there's been a lot of idle talk lately about this recommendation. It's a very simple recommendation, takes one paragraph, and I think we have to go the next route and see. Before we start talking about solutions, we have to get a handle on the problem and do that. And I think that I agree with the senators. I think this is a very important recommendation. But I also agree with Deborah in that if it's bundled into the whole business of the reorganization of the county government, it could get lost. I think it has to stand on its own. So anyway, that's my speech. Leo.
Yeah, I agree with your last statement there. The only thing is I would like to add, I'm glad, first of all, thank you for the work you've done, and I am flipping through this, and I'm finally glad to have the actual copy in front of me. In the wastewater situation, for the record, you used the word Cape Cod Wastewater District. Everybody is using the word authority, and that has kind of started this whole concept and argument of, one authority doing everything. I'm pleased that you use the word district. We have been working on a plan. Paul is here. Cape Cod Commission has been working a long time. I believe it's going to be done in about a year or so. It's going to address the situations that our speaker has just mentioned about the isolated areas that probably are going to need our immediate attention, and then some that will need attention in the future, depending on build-out. The fact that you use the term district, I'll add a fifth or fourth scenario to my Provincetown friend and say that maybe it's a situation that we actually look at areas, individual areas, districts, if you will, for the express purpose of funding those districts, cleaning it up and funding it. And those will not be basically hampered by the town line. So again, we need to talk about it, and I'm glad it's on the table. We should move forward. On the reorganization of county government, I too feel that the two discussions should be separate and apart from each other, because both of them one should not take the other one down. They both need some equal time and certainly shouldn't be tied to each other. My question would be, was there any discussion of intermediate change as opposed to the one that came out of the recommendation? I, for a long time, have been sitting here quite comfortable with the Assembly, quite comfortable with the weighted vote situation, because I understand how it works. And I think the town of Harwich is pleased that they are able to have a single representative sitting here for the town of Harwich, as I'm sure that a number of the other towns are happy to have somebody here. We are a legislative body. We do the checks and balances. I also feel that 3 county commissioners aren't enough. And I don't think the way that they are a partisan position, number one. Number two, they have to run Cape-wide. It makes an awful lot of sense that virtually a volunteer has to come out, raise an awful lot of signatures, quite frankly, win 2 elections, the primary election and then the end election, to take a seat that pays, $11,000 a year. That, to me, I think should have been looked at carefully. Again, I've said to my colleagues here on the board, and I think maybe even you gentlemen have heard it in the past, that I've advocated and will continue to advocate keeping the Assembly the way it is and increasing the county commissioners to 5. They will be regionally set up so that they will be representing areas of the Cape. And then when you talk about the administrator, we have a report done from the MMA, which goes into very depth of how we should organize and change the employees, if you will, and their functions. And I think we need to really take that in and read that in depth, and hopefully the county commissioners will use some recommendations that came forward out of that. So basically all that is just to tell you that I'm looking at kind of incorporating some of your ideas, keeping some of the old stuff, and moving forward in something that might come out where it's not going to be as drastic as what came out of your suggestions. I'm not convinced, and no one has convinced me yet, and I'm looking forward to our discussions on this, that your suggestions are in the best interest of moving forward. And I know you said, well, doing nothing is not an option because county has to move forward. We haven't really done that bad. I mean, I've only been here for a short time, but I will have to tell you, for my colleagues that have been here longer, we really haven't really done that bad. I mean, the county offers an awful lot of services to the towns. I see towns not taking advantage of some of those services, and only recently they've even started to do so. Maybe some education, maybe some, providing new services and letting them know what's available. The Open Cape thing is going to certainly bring up a whole other discussion. So my question after that whole statement is, did you guys or did your committee talk about kind of an interim change as opposed to the one that you recommended?
No,
yeah, we had a vote on it.
We had, well, we had, Frankly, there was a pretty broad consensus on the structural changes that we recommended. And there were, as I recall, a fairly overwhelming vote in favor of it. I think that you used a phrase that I think did come up a bit, which is checks and balances, which is an old expression. And I think, it's mostly associated with the U.S. Constitution. I think there was a sense that was not needed at the county level, given the scale and size of county government, that an elaborate system of checks and balances probably wasn't in the best interest of the system. That really it's about getting the community and the towns and the public engaged in what's happening here at a regional level, and how do you best get that? So that it's more about, it's less about what's going on inside the county and more about how the county's relating to the rest of the community. And I think that's what we were trying to accomplish, is to strengthen those connections going outward, and feeling that this, a system of checks and balances inside the county was probably a lot of machinery that in the end didn't generate a lot of public value. And I don't mean that as a criticism at all. It's not meant that way, but that nature of the situation. And so I sense there was a lot of support. I don't know, Henri, did you feel that as well?
You'll have our minutes, too,
Yeah,
which I think
you
are in
can
the
check
back
them.
there.
And the votes, if you want.
I think the general undercurrent,
Yeah.
we did have you like the status quo, we did have, 5 commissioners, But I think at the end of the day, we're there with a very diverse group of folks, representing the business community, et cetera. And there is this whole issue that you have to deal with as to what exactly is the Assembly of Delegates, and what is the awareness of the county as a functioning entity, and who out there in, the citizenry who lives on the Cape fully understands what's going on at the county level. And how do you sort of up the profile of that? Right. And that was a good part, I think, of the discussion as to how do you make this more relevant in the minds of the voters and the people that receive services. And to that extent, I think that played a bit in the notion that if you had, 5 regionally and 2 running countywide, that you'd have, and, we had a big discussion on whether it should be partisan or nonpartisan, and, we opted for nonpartisan, but the idea is that would up the sort of awareness and profile of the county by having larger structured players across regions that would be running for office with ostensibly more weight, clout, and more meaning. So, is that fair? Maybe from the point of view, if you're sitting on the Assembly, no, but from the point of view of the folks that sat around and discussed this on our commission, it seemed to be a reasonable recommendation to make. What happens with it, though, of course, is going to be up to you. So.
Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
I'm going to make sure I get a copy of the minutes of this particular meeting, this particular meeting, and what both you gentlemen just said, because quite frankly, as I was listening to your response to my question, your arguments, from what I took them in, is exactly why I want to keep the Assembly. Because the people of the town of Harwich, I think, are connected closer to county government by having an individual sitting here at the county government. And whether I may not have a lot of power because I only have 5% of the votes, it's my obligation to bring information back to the town. It's my obligation as a elected official to educate my town and my constituents, and to keep them involved in updated in what county government is doing. To take that link away and have one individual representing Harwich, Brewster, and part of Yarmouth, and maybe Chatham, and to say that that's a better and closer way of bringing the voter, might be a better way for the business community, but as far as the individual voter, I don't know. I'm going to, like I say, I like your response because I think I'm going to use it.
Well, fine, but I would tell you, Leo, that, 30-some-odd years ago, whatever, they shrunk the size of the Massachusetts House of Representatives from 240 members to 160. Both islands lost their representative. Nantucket had one, the Vineyard had one. They both lost them. They got merged with Falmouth. I would venture if you went out to Nantucket and said, do you miss your own state representative who now lives in Barnstable, what would the answer be? People wouldn't know it. A significant change was made in the way people were
Falmouth.
He lives in Nantucket.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Oh, he had to move back?
He lives in Nantucket.
Tim Madden is his name.
Tim Madden is there.
Oh, no, Madden. No, I'm talking about the former one.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
Madden.
Oh, yeah.
But Madden represents the vineyard and part of Falmouth.
Correct.
But if you asked, are you being not represented or whatever, most people would say, no, that's our representative. They don't remember it. It's a change that was made to create efficiencies in the House. So, I mean, these things happen, for good,
Yeah.
bad, and different or otherwise, and you have an opinion, you opine it.
Okay.
But, you can't be afraid of
Let's hear
change.
from Wellfleet and Eastham, starting with Wellfleet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Senators, for your work. I thought you should know, I mean, there is quite a bit of pushback in my part of the world about the proposals that are coming forward from this special commission. But one area that I don't hear pushback on is whether or not there needs to be regional planning. I think I have not heard a single person say, no, we don't need a regional plan, we don't need to plan around watersheds. So I think that part of your recommendation absolutely seems to be, commended by the general populace. However, part of the problem, and this relates to the bundling issue we're talking about, is that people look at your list of members, and there's little or no representation from our end of the world on the special commission, yet we were told that this was a commission of all the movers and shakers and important people on Cape Cod. And you look in vain for the people from Wellfleet and Truro. There is one from Eastham. And so I think that the fear in the public relations and communications problem that you're facing right now is that there will be a wastewater authority established, which will, not that they're going to run a 9.5-inch pipe down through all of the Outer Cape, but that we're going to get taxed by that authority for running that pipe in other parts of the Cape, and our vote will be overwhelmed by the towns that need it. So that's where the pushback's coming. There's a lot of talk about that. I think that if we didn't bundle these two issues together and you could be clear about the planning facet of this process, it would be very helpful to moving it forward.
Well, Paul, thank you. And I understand what you're saying, and I guess I would respond by saying we made 3 sets of recommendations in this report. So we were asked to look at reforming county government, and we took that fairly broadly. But I do acknowledge the fact that the issue of wastewater has its own characteristics and its own battles to fight, and they're going to be difficult and not easy. And in the end, we're both alumni of veterans of the Cape Cod Commission Wars.
Which the same.
It was the same. We have a lot of experience, believe me, between the two of us in terms of what happened around that and the difficulties involved. And for me, it's a little deja vu. It's like the same arguments, the same questions, the same concerns, the same divisions are already surfacing. And that's fine. That's important. That represents people have different interests. I always like to say where people stand depends on where they sit. It's always been my experience in politics, and I respect that. But understand what we're saying here is that we're looking at restructuring and reforming the county. And you can argue over the specifics and the merits, the demerits of that, but I like the report. I think we did a good job there, and I think the recommendations are good ones. They're not going to satisfy everyone. They're not perfect, but I think they move us in the right direction. There's nothing, I was around when the first county was created. I thought there was a lot of machinery in that system. And that can sometimes undermine your mission and undermine your visibility in the community. And I think this package that we're recommending with respect to the structure of the county will in fact make you more visible in your communities rather than less, in my opinion. That's a difference we can have, but I believe it will. And I would further say that we also have in this report a recommendation about bringing other regional entities, which are outside the county currently, in a county government, because we think you need to create more foundation here, more activity, more responsibility, more authority, more accountability, more visibility, more coordination. I think that all moves us in a similar direction. With respect to wastewater, we didn't make a recommendation about whether, so we're not bundling it. We didn't say that should be under the newly reformed county government. We simply said, you need to do something here. And you need to start doing it now. And you need to start having that debate that, a little bit is playing out here about what it's going to look like, who's going to be involved, what kinds of authorities is it going to have, what kind of regulatory and taxing and revenue authorities is it going to have. Personally, I would like to see it under the county. But I'm not sure it will work. And I don't want to presume that judgment early on. That's somebody else's decision to make down the road. So we didn't bundle the two together, I guess is what I'm saying, Paul. We did put them forward separately because we felt it would be a mistake to put the two together. It's too early in that regard.
Why don't I get Teresa in here?
Just following up on the feedback you were giving to Leo. Given that conversation, given that talking about wanting to engage people and have more visibility, why are you opposed to having an elected executive?
You're asking that question to me, you're asking the wrong person, because I have some instincts to move in that direction, but there was no support for that, I don't think, really.
No,
very little.
In reality, you look at Nassau County and Long Island, they have an elected, it is sort of a food fight. We think with a strong policy board and a pragmatic person that's going to be there longer than maybe 2 years or 4 years that can actually implement long-term strategies is a lot more effective way to go. As opposed to an elected administrator, why would you need the commissioners if you have an elected administrator? And we think that if you want to have, and if you want to have a broader dialogue across the region, if you lose the structure where you have commissioners who ostensibly represent all the Cape, and our recommendation that there be 7, you come down to 1. And is that the best, will you feel that your voice is being heard, or that, Truro's is, or whatever? So, I think there was a strong understanding that, a competent administrator, and a lot of this was driven by our town managers who are good, and have done very effective jobs, for Brewster and Sandwich and formerly for the town of Yarmouth, that have been in this business, that's the most pragmatic way to go.
Okay. Yeah, go right ahead.
Because one of the things that I don't feel comfortable with is that in the plan as it's laid out, we have the addition of town managers who are appointed, we have an appointed executive, and the elected voices in total are reduced to 7. And so to me that says you're moving away from voices of people and moving toward people for hire running things. And maybe that's the way you want to go, but I think it's worth bringing to the surface and talking about.
I'd like to jump in on this, because this is something that I looked at for a long time, and I know Julie looked at it for a long time, and really, I agree with Leo. I think the county government, as it's structured right now, is doing a terrific job. There's one caveat to that, though, and that is that I do feel that just as the towns have moved toward charters where they have an administrator who basically runs the day-to-day operations, puts out the contracts, and hires the people under him, I think the county definitely needs that kind of person. I think there was a consensus in the room to strengthen the role of the executive, whether he or she be elected or appointed. Now, that brings up an issue. If you have a very strong executive, and you have us sitting as a legislative body, we pass the budget, what do the commissioners do? We've basically taken away a good 60% of their responsibility. So that was really what pushed, I think, a lot of people in the direction of this hermaphroditic body of both commissioners and assembly members.
Strike that from the record.
But,
Translate that.
and the other issue is, unfortunately, is the weighted vote, which sticks in everybody's craw. There's been people in this room, especially when they were first elected, who said, what is this? Why am I sitting here? I only have 1%, and that guy over there has 20%, but there's nothing, as Leo said, there's nothing we can do about that. So, and so I think there was an attempt of people who didn't like the weighted vote to move into a direction of everybody sitting at the table having an equal vote. And the only way to do that would be divided by population. So that's really how it came to that discussion. But the commissioners were on the agenda also with these two gentlemen here, so I'd like to get a follow-up on exactly what they intend to do.
I have to go in a couple of minutes, so...
Okay, I just want to find out, now that you've presented the commissioners their recommendations, I'd like to find out what they're going to do. Yeah. Well, no, I'm not dismissing them, I just wanted to add to commissioners.
I just had one more. I know you went to a lot of work. I went to a lot of these meetings, and to a certain extent, at times, it was sort of like herding cats to get people to all speak at the same time for the, whatever it was you had on your agenda. So, I understand that there was a lot of thought went into this report. I guess the question that has come to my mind is, you spent more than sort of 3 times the page space in your report on the Cape Light Compact and the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative than you did on the wastewater problem. Why did you see that as needing that kind of coverage in your...
Because it was very complicated when you get in and looked at the difficulties around the Cape Light Compact and was it the other organization, the CVAC, and it was just complicated. The details were complicated.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Would the commissioners like to tell us what they intend to do with this?
We're done. Yeah. We're finished.
You're
done with that?
Sit there with us.
We're done.
Well, no, I mean, I don't want to dismiss you, but I mean, this is...
Go ahead, dismiss us, please. All right, thanks.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. Let me say, I attended almost every meeting. I think I missed one of the special commission meetings, which I found very, very helpful, because it's far more interesting to have heard all the dialogue that's behind this recommendation. I think it's helpful. In terms of some of the comments that have been made, I just want to make one comment. And you talk about, when they talk about merging the assembly and the commissioners, what it means is that it takes the legislative functions of the assembly, although those functions would be handled by fewer people, but it removes all the executive functions from the current county commissioners. So it would reduce, in a sense, our role, current role, by about 60%. And instead of being the executive, the commissioners would be the policymakers. So the policymakers and the legislative functions of the assembly would be merged together, and all of the executive functions would be held by the county executive. And it's similar to a town, in a sense, where the legislative functions are really a town meeting. But anyway, it does eliminate a layer of county government. I mean, our budget is only, $24 million, so it's probably as less than some of the budgets of the towns on the Cape. But yet, the county is able to do a lot with that. And I think the idea is, if we're going to move forward in regionalizing, that we need to have a structure that makes that happen. When we spoke to the special commissioners originally, I remember one of the things I said to them: we want to have a strong county government, a county government that has a recurring source of revenue, a sustainable recurring source of revenue, and a county that's relevant, and a county that can respond to the needs of the towns, not have to wait for a process for things to go through. And I'm not critical of that. I'm just saying that technology technology that is here and coming is going to completely change the way governments operate. It's amazing, the technology that is out there for counties. Look up a couple of counties on the internet, and you will see how they are utilizing technologies to really create efficiencies that are one would have never thought could ever happen, even in terms of budget. I mean, there's a technology called informatics that relates to finances, where the creation and the management of a budget is amazing. And this is already happening. So we're kind of behind things in a way. But that's not why I'm here to talk about that. You really want to know, what are we going to do about it? Of course, we know what is in it. I think we agree that wastewater and governance are going to be separate. We can't move forward working on both, us as commissioners working on both. So I think moving forward on the governance thing, I think it's so important that we work together. The Assembly and the commissioners work together on this, because in the end, it does go to a referendum. But it first goes to the legislature. I mentioned this at the Cape Selectmen's meeting a couple of weeks ago, that if a piece of legislation goes to the legislature and they know that there's conflict around it, that there's two sides, or there are people that don't support it, they're not going to support it. So it's incumbent upon us to really work together and see what we can come up with. Maybe there is some transitional period that might be needed. I'm not going to say that now, but here's what I think that we think we would do first. And that is, we would hold 2 or 3 public forums on this report. We would get it out to the public, and we would have a public forum on the Lower Cape, the Mid Cape, and the Upper Cape. And we would encourage a lot of people to participate, and probably this would be a facilitated forum, because I don't think any one of the 3 of us are particularly that skilled to have a forum like that. But it could be facilitated, and there are ways to do that. And facilitators also have people like the gentleman next to us, who just records everything that is said. So there is never any question about who said what, or this is what we agreed to do. But I think if we can work together and come up with something that we can all live with, and maybe it has parts to it, I don't know that. I'm not going to speculate on that. But I think the first step is to get community input, because we don't have that yet. We have reaction to the wastewater authority out there, if you're on the same email list as I am. But we want to separate the wastewater. It's already being separated, because we have also asked Paul Niedzwiecki and Andy Gottlieb to take this on and to develop a regional plan and come back to the commissioners by the end of the year with a plan that we can move forward with. And I expect that to happen. That will move on a parallel track. But the commissioners will take on the governance. But we want to work together with you, and we want to start by getting community input on this. I think it will benefit all of us. At least it will help people be more aware of the county, but it will also let people understand, because I think many townspeople more and more understand the importance of efficiencies that can be created by regional services. There's no question about that.
Before I open it up to the Assembly, Are you considering the possibility of getting something on the ballot this coming November?
No.
So if it doesn't get on the ballot this coming November, and it waits for another 2-year cycle, it may be 4 years before this thing, because we couldn't, in other words, you couldn't presume that the offices would change when you put it on the ballot. You'd have to have people running for the Assembly. You'd also have to have people, you couldn't have people running for 2 different offices at the same time.
But you're also running this November.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, if the organizational change is not on the ballot this November, it goes 2 years from now to 2014, all right? we're not going to know whether or not it's going to pass. So the people here would be running for an office, and that may not, in other words, you wouldn't be able to eliminate the office.
Well, the same is true for us. I mean, we'd be running for an office, but that would probably be easier to deal with because you would just add people to it. Well, I don't know. I mean, I suppose we could, what? I think there's, I think we have to educate people about this. I don't think you can just do this and put it on the ballot in November.
Okay.
I mean, we can certainly try and work towards that goal, but that's a huge goal if we really want to gain. First of all, we have to get together on it, and whether we could do that in April, May, June, July, in 5 months, I don't know.
Well, to me, it would have to be a commitment of all of us to sort of keep our minds open and work together, and to really see, is there a better form of government than what we have, and not just wit ourselves to this is who I am and this is what I represent. So I do think that it is an opportunity for the commissioners and the assembly to work in a very open and transparent, but also put ourselves aside and look at, we are making decisions now that are going to affect the future and the future governance of this place. And we are not going to be sitting in these seats in 10, 15 years. So it is a government for the people beyond us as well. So how can we make this government, as it's structured now, we have to wait every week for the executives to come in to review things. There are things that we ask to have made available to us that can be put off for another 2 weeks. It can be put off for a month if it's so forgotten to be brought back to us. And for us to be on that job every day, to be saying, where is that information, that structure doesn't exist. So things are government is a slow and laborious process to begin with, and this makes it even slower and more laborious. So can we make this government more nimble, flexible, and responsive to the needs of the region? And I think that that's really the charge here. I do think that if we were going to enter into dialogue together and to try to work this out, a facilitator, a separate nonpartisan or an outside facilitator to come in and help us with that conversation, to help focus the conversation, would be a very good thing. And maybe even, we'd have to bring in legal expertise at certain times if we're doing this. So these are things that we have to think about, and we would appreciate your thoughts. And if you have thoughts about the process, please forward them to us and express those, because those are all going to be things that we could consider parts of each of you. The other thing about the wastewater, it's unfortunate the word authority just lit up and went into everyone's minds, and I appreciate that the Special Commission to Review County Governments did put such a strong stake, and they put it really on the far end as an authority. So it could be an authority, but it could be something in between, and I think it was mentioned here. It could be a federation of townships that come together and say, we will work on these.
It's called a district, actually.
Oh, it's district now, but originally it was put out as an authority, so I'm sure. So one way or the other, it's still an entity, okay. And that entity might have some regional authority. So what does that mean for me down in Wellfleet and for you up in Falmouth? So, being from the Outer Cape, I'm very sensitive to those discussions and to those concerns. I do think that we as a body, as an assembly of delegates, sometimes confuse, are we there to represent the needs of the towns as opposed to being county representatives reflecting back to the towns what it is the county is doing and how those towns can work more regionally together. That isn't always clear in our thinking when we go forward on initiatives, that we're really working on behalf of regional efforts, even though we are elected to the county government. And I felt that on the assembly when I served on it, and I feel that now on the county. And the other point that I wanted to make is that I appreciated the assembly of the commission's stake in the ground, because it was now the conversation towards solutions and what are those options. And really that's what the wastewater discussion is bringing. Nothing has been decided and nothing can be decided unless it goes to the voters. And whatever goes to the voters has to prove that it fixes the problem with the least amount of infrastructure, Cape-wide, and it is a savings for the ratepayer Cape-wide. If it doesn't satisfy those three recommendations, then it's not a good regional plan, because the point of a regional plan is to reduce the costs and be more efficient. So that is the goal here. There has been nothing done, and we won't be able to have the discussion until at least we see proposals on a table, and then we can all get into we're pro or for, or, this is good and that is bad. I did want to just make one, and this is a personal observation and my own personal feeling about an elected executive as opposed to an appointed executive. In my experience, especially in today's climate, there's very few elected people who will stay the course if it's the right course, if the political winds are against it. And an appointed person might be able to carry that banner in a much more objective way and guide the body that is implementing that policy. And that is my only feeling about having an elected official, because if it's political, you're never going to get straight, honest policy that is a benefit to the region. And that's my own personal
company accepts that.
Well, exactly. Well, I try very hard to be honest. Some people don't like it. I get criticized for it, but at least you know how I feel, and I am standing up not just for my own skin, but the skin of those I represent.
Why don't we see, Julie?
Well, I think this is useful, and I think it's important for the public to understand that any wastewater issues are not going to be dealt with immediately, because we do not have the report as yet, either the plan or the possibility of how a plan could be implemented regionally. So that's good. That's put off until we hear from Paul and Andy. I would certainly support the concept that that you and we should work together and try to come up with a proposal that is as good as we can make it. There's enough initiative from this special commission, and they have presented some ideas, and we may want those ideas or we may want some modification of those, but I think it's definitely worth our talking about it, because I don't think something is going to get done unless we can be relatively united. I also tend to agree that it's unlikely we could get to this to be on the ballot in November, when that has to be this summer, right? I mean, it's possible, but I don't think that if the fact that we may not be able to do that shouldn't mean that we should put off the discussion. I think we go ahead with the discussion, and if we can get it settled well before the next chance to be on the ballot, great. I think we could feel good about that. And so that, if we are going to have public meetings, I would want it crystal clear that we're only talking about one topic, not all topics. That would be important, I think. But
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say that there is no dust that will collect on this report. We are not, if we look at the timelines, when you ask the question, I think we're ready to start now on making this happen. Now, if it were to turn out that we would be ready to go in November, we could go in November. An implementation date can also be included into the legislation. Sometimes the implementation dates are too soon and you can't get them done. But I think this is all part of the plan of making this happen. We want to move it forward as best we can in gaining the support we need to make it happen, because we can't move to make it happen if we don't have the support. So we have to work both ways, get the job done and get the support at the same time.
All right, Leo.
I'm just going to add one more thing, if I can, Leo, before you speak. But, the Special Commission on County Governance, everyone thought that they weren't going to be able to do it in a certain amount of time. So they did go over a little bit. They thought they were going to get it done by the end of the year. It took them 2 more months, now being presented to us in the 3rd month. But that was an awful lot of work done in a very condensed period of time, and they committed themselves to it. Those people who signed up for that task and agreed to do it, also committed to it, and they attended and took it very seriously. I think that if we all wanted to commit to that and have something to present to the public, that this is something that we agree on. We've looked at some of the negatives and we've had our food fights between us, and this is something that we think can work. That is the time that we would, if we could file that by June, we could present that and gain public support for it. But legislation will only give us the ability to go forward and make those changes. The implementation, as everyone says, it's overused, but the devil is in the details. And once it's the blessing has been given from the legislature to go forward and you can make these changes, that's when the real hammering is done out as far as authority and the legislative rules, bylaws of the county government. So those are things that can be taken care of once the implementation, and that would take another whole round of working together on those.
Leo?
Well, just a direct response to that, I disagree with you. I think that all that has to be done prior to filing for the legislation in June, because it's all going to be incorporated in the charter. You're not going to get the permission to just go ahead and make a change such as being recommended without having all the devils in the detail worked out, because that's the stuff that is going to be incorporated in the new charter, and all that language needs to be on the ballot, and all that language needs to be approved by the state before it gets on the ballot, and all that needs to be worked out before June. And the last charter change we went through, I think June 2nd was the cutoff date, that we had to have everything in writing and correct. So with that said, one of the statements that you said kind of bothered me a little bit, and said that this report's not going to create dust. We're going to move forward with it. Am I to take that the commissioners agree with the recommendation on the structural change to county government, going to 7 county commissioners and doing away with the assembly? Is that what you guys have agreed to?
I assume that you mean the process has to...
Since I said it, I guess I better defend what I said. What I meant was, this is not going to sit on the shelf in terms of we're going to wait and see how we want to go forward with this. What I'm saying is that we're going to discuss the report, which we have not as yet. We received it today. We haven't discussed it yet. So what I'm saying is, this is going to move forward. I didn't say as is, because they're recommendations. The commissioners will get to that point. It's just not going to sit there waiting for us to decide what to do with it.
All right. Just go ahead, Leo. Do you want to follow?
Yeah, just one more comment, and I think it's basically just for our own edification and kind of thoughts too. Yeah, you had mentioned that you want to send this report out to the public and you want input on the actual report. I'm not too sure if that's really a good thing to do, in a sense, because, I want it out to the public, and I want people to certainly read it and take it in, but it's so vague, and it's so kind of, it's a document that is giving you people, because you people asked for it, the county commissioners, direction to go. You may want to wait until you get a little bit more agreed on the direction you're going to go, so that people can discuss stuff. Because quite frankly, there's not an awful lot to discuss here. Unfortunately, someone said the word authority, and authority's not even in this document, okay? It's district. It's a huge difference to the people out there in the public when they hear those two different terms. So I'm not sure, the jury's still out on me personally, on whether we should be holding public forums on response to this document. It certainly should go out to the public. They should be able to read it and get back to us with their inputs on it. But we may want to wait until either we, Assembly, come up with some action that we're going to derive from this document, or you people, the county commissioners, if you have a end that you want to go.
Boy, Leo, you are way ahead of me on the details. When I say we're going to send this out, I didn't necessarily mean this whole book. When we agree as to what the form of government is that we want to support, if we want to support this recommendation, the commissioners and hopefully the assembly, so that we can get out, we can at least we will have a structure to be able to present to the community. We we'll have something there that makes, that's a condensation of what is in here. People could always have the opportunity to read everything, but we would formulate this public forum based on the core principles that are in this, and then hope to get response from the public on those, not into all the details.
All right. Senator, did you want to say comment?
Just one sort of observation. The commission started with a 57-word question on a ballot. And that led to the legislation and the subsequent legislative session, which was developed locally and filed regionally and then, worked on by the legislature. So the notion that you would have for a wastewater district authority, whatever you want to call it, the whole thing buttoned up, et cetera, theoretically, you can start with the parameters of what you'd like to see, and that would be a measurable deadline if you wanted to move on that. And I think that is something that you could do, by the timelines established for, the next election cycle, which would give you a feel as to whether or not the full Monty, the full exposure, the full legislation drafted locally, filed, and whether that's something you want to do. So, that was the structure for the commission. A 57-word question. Then in the next legislative session, a bill was filed.
Okay. Now, I just want to comment, because I agree with Leo, and I've had a lot of these debates, and we went through the 20th Century Task Force and so on to change the commission, but you remember, that ultimately resulted in an ordinance that came before the Assembly, which we voted on. So at some point, even though you take public, input on this, you're going to have a document, and somebody's going to have to say yes or no, because if you just go out there, people are going to say, well, I like this, I like that. But if you go through a legislative process like we have, you start off with something, you find out whether and you stand by it. This is my personal opinion. You say, this is what we're going to do, and take it, tell us whether you like it or not. And then if you find out that people don't like it, then you amend it with the process. Because if you just take comments, at the end of the day, who's going to sit there and try to say, well, sort of people sort of didn't like this, and they sort of like that, maybe we'll change this and change that. It has to be a structured process by which you come up with a document and a proposal which goes to the legislature and ultimately to the ballot. And the question is, how are you going to do that? Where's it going to come from? Where is that? At the end of this whole public process, you got a document in your hand that's going to go to the legislature. Who's going to say, this is it? This is the one we're going to go with? That's the question. And how is it going to get there?
Yeah, I think that what Senator Rauschenbach was saying is that you can start with the concept and people agree that we have to do something. There's an environmental problem, so we need a commission. And then that passed, and then the structure was created, and the details were put into it, and then that went forward for legislation. And I think what's being suggested is that can happen here. And that's going to have to come to between us to have some sort of general consensus that we can agree this much, that this is a good idea, and this is what we're going to do, and then those details are going to be hammered out.
Within the life expectancy of some of the older members of this?
Well, hopefully within the life expectancy of all of us here, and not have another 25 years go by.
Leo.
Just to clarify my comments, because even with Mr. Doherty not here, we're starting to combine discussions. My comments had nothing to do with the creation of the wastewater board or anything like that. My comments on the June and having everything ready were on the changing of the county governance, because it was a charter change, and it wouldn't seem logical that you would do that in pieces. It would seem more logical to me when you're changing the county government and changing the charter, that you would do it all at once and have everything, all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. But, and I agree with the senator, if you're going down the road, you can certainly do that with a single-page document and see if people want to create districts or a huge authority. That's fine. That certainly can be done, and as he explained, it has been done in the past. But I don't want to confuse the two topics, because, again, that's what we seem to be doing here, and we should keep them separate.
All right. Well, I'm prepared to discuss this with the Assembly, and even to take a non-binding vote to see whether or not it has the support in the Assembly, to see what comments we make, so that maybe we can. I mean, it would behoove the county to go forward as one voice. If we want to make changes to go up the legislature, and I'm talking about the county, I mean, not just us, I'm talking about the people out there too, but ultimately, somebody's going to have to come up with something, and it's got to be pushed forward, and I think that at least, a lot of people around that table, they worked very hard, both the chairs did, and I think they at least deserve our consideration and our input at some point, so that we'll do that as soon as, I don't know what you guys are going to do it sooner or later too, I assume, okay? Yes. So you're going to commit yourself to some of this, yes or no?
Well, we're going to commit ourselves to working on it.
Because we're prepared to do that.
I think that we're committed to start the process. We're not committed to what's in it, and we haven't read it. And nobody has really read the whole thing from front to back. So I think that's the first charge we all have on your side of this dais and ours. And then if you want to have your discussions on where you agree or disagree, and we have ours, and then we can come together and try to hammer that out and really come out with one voice, that would be a great thing. But I think, first of all, we have to read it, and we should put a timetable on it and really read it and not say we kind of read the pieces that we were interested in or, make believe that we read any of it. Because this is a very important thing, and as I say, it's not really about us sitting here, it's really about our government and our future of this region, so.
Okay. Does anybody have any pressing questions we've all beaten this to death? Okay.
If you don't mind, the first thing I'd like to do, of course, is meet with my Board of Selectmen, make sure they get a copy, and we start having a dialogue. And I know you folks had to, I think, postpone your meeting with Provincetown Selectmen. I was wondering, have you set a new date?
I am not aware of the new date for either Provincetown or Wellfleet. Those were the two. We do have a date for Wellfleet, so we have to get that on we'll make sure that Kara or Mahoney contacts, or if you want to relay that, we want to get down there as soon as possible, because there's a lot of other things that we wanted to discuss.
Because the point I'm getting at is if you're going to be meeting with them to talk about this, it doesn't make sense for me to meet with them the week before and take up twice as much of their time.
Right.
It would make sense to
We could do that together.
Do it.
So let's do that.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for the commissioners that not related to the subject that we just covered, anything on the budget or anything? I guess you're off the hook.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll be following this. Thanks.
We really do look forward to working together on this. This
Thanks
is
once
important.
again to the senator and his colleague, that's co-chairs. Okay. Yeah.
Is this in digital form anywhere?
Yeah, everybody, he said that they were going to email it.
Yeah, electronically, we can get you a copy on your email.
Well, yeah, because I don't want to.
I bet it'll be on the
Print this out
county
for
website.
the select,
I bet
you know?
it'll be on the county website at some point, too.
Okay.
Okay.
They did say it'd be available.
Yeah, go ahead.
Must have been a lot of hot air. It's the first time he's had to change paper in a long time.
Well, she just left, so I think it'll probably go
I'm running
quicker.
out of budget money.
Motion to adjourn.
We're getting there. We get home and still be light out.
No, I'm not worried about
We're not going to be able to vote on this one here because Tom Lynch isn't here.
Okay.
And Tom was the vice chair that day, so we don't have a quorum to do those
Okay.
minutes.
Right, because John wasn't there either.
John wasn't there, but it was Tom, and Chris Kanega wasn't there that day
Okay.
either.
Okay.
So that's why this.
You're all set? Okay, guys, we're going to reconvene here, or there's any members of there's no public officials here, any communications from members of the public? Anybody from the public? Okay, the assembly will now convene. We'll have reports of committee, and we do not have a quorum of the Finance Committee. Do we have a quorum of the Health and Human Services?
It appears that we do.
Yes.
Okay, well, in that case, you're going to have to approve your minutes. No, you don't? Who's the chair of that? You're the-
Yes.
Yeah.
1, 2. We'd like to get a motion, I think we've got a majority here, to vote on the minutes as presented in your packages, our recommendations to to the full assembly.
So moved.
All in favor?
Okay, it's, you all set, Mr. Chairman?
Do you want to report, or you?
No. Okay.
Briefly, I'll tell you anyway, because Leo wants it. I'm in a sharing mode. Basically, these are all level funded with no new positions, as stated in many of the hearings. And we voted in favor of all of them with the proviso that basically I think we all felt that human services in the type of economy we've been experiencing are more important even than they are usually, and that if it becomes apparent that more money is available, we would like this to be one of the first places looked, and if less money is available, we'd like this to be one of the last places held up for cuts, because there are some things with Children's Cove particularly, and the human services that they requested and that are currently trying to be funded by donations and other ways that are really necessary, that were not approved by the commissioners and are not in the budget. So,
Okay, I have, we will, of course, as usual, we will have a meeting of the chairs, but you'll all flesh this out with the Finance Committee, and I have the assurances of the chairman of the Finance Committee that they will seriously consider all of the recommendations from the committees and incorporate that into their report, final recommendations. So, thank you. Do we have a report from the clerk?
Nothing to report.
Wow. Do we have any other business? John?
I know that I received an email from the ethics.
SFI.
Yeah, but to start our SFIs, and I think that's, right, I just want to alert everybody in the assembly that that is to be done in a timely manner.
May 1st is a deadline?
Right.
30 days after you received it.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
wow.
And you need a printout and a receipt of filing.
Okay, any other business? Hearing none?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Stop calling me.